Right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your time at this book launch event. Just to let everybody know that we are recording this event, so you'll only appear on the recording if you have your video on or if you ask any live questions. So if you don't want to appear on a recording, please feel free to just pop the questions in the chat. Joy, who is monitoring those sorts of things, will be watching out for them. And then just leave your camera off. But if you are happy to be recorded, it's always wonderful to see faces and to get a sense of who's with us. And it's nice to see people that I'm familiar with and new people as well. So looking forward to getting to know you all, as this program, this hour unfolds. Just to let you know that the Mint House is a wonderful charity. If you haven't heard of them before, they do take donations if you want to support them, and they also have a series of talks that happen across the year. Over this autumn and winter period in the Northern Hemisphere, that'll be spring and summer for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, they're running a series of 3 CPD workshops for practitioners. You're able to book onto any of those, the whole package of 3 or just one. The first one is around challenging power dynamics and restorative justice by Michael Lubinsky from the US, who is a wonderful speaker. I can attest to that. The second one is creating a place to go using art and design in restorative justice from Claire Oldington. And then the third one is to, not for or with, how a restorative approach might inform safeguarding practice. And that's being delivered by Colette Selwood and Pete Wallace. So if you do want to sign up to any of those, the link for that is in the chat. So please feel free to have a look at that. The Mint House are also really great in making sure that they collect information and kind of thoughts and feedback from anybody who attends their sessions. So please do fill out the evaluation form on today's presentation and talk. So my name is Kerry Clamp. I'm an associate professor at the University of Nottingham in England. I'm clearly not English because my accent betrays that. I'm South African, but I live here. And the reason for me chairing this session today is because I edit a book series published by Routledge called Contemporary Issues in Restorative Practice. And Justin and Tyler, who are from the LCCS team who wrote the book today, are part of that series. So this is the 3rd series in the book, and I'm absolutely delighted that we get to do this. So just to tell you very, very quickly about the books, about the book series, if you're interested in it, I noticed, right? So I've always had a strong connection with both policy and practice while being an academic. I chaired the Restorative Justice Council for 3 years, which is a national charity here in England and Wales. And in my engagement with practitioners and with academics and with policymakers, there seems to kind of be an echo chamber of academics publishing things, right? And so what I wanted to do was to create an opportunity for practitioners to be able to publish their own work. Given that it's published with Routledge, they still like to have a strong kind of academic standard in their publishing, but this is a new experiment for them and it's going quite well, if I do say so myself. So that's what the book series is about. And if you are interested in talking about, if you have any practice, we're really wanting innovators at the forefront of practice, to be able to get their work out there and to make sure that it is received internationally. Sometimes when practitioners work in countries, they don't very often have opportunities to interact with other practitioners from other jurisdictions, continents. So this provides a really great opportunity to do that. So enough about me in the series. Let's get to the important part of the business. It really is my pleasure to introduce a book that takes us into the heart of restorative practice in schools. And it's told through the experiences of these wonderful colleagues of mine who have pioneered it in Singapore. So the Builders Project, which is what their project was called, is not just a framework for managing behavior, it's also a story of how school culture can be transformed when relationships are built, strengthened, and restored across the whole community. For me, what makes this book especially significant is that it's showing how restorative justice can be enriched through cross-cultural perspectives. Very often, it is the West that dominates in terms of publications, And this is a great example of how I guess lessons have been taken from Terry O'Connell, but not just implemented. It's actually being integrated and adopted in a way that makes cultural sense, and also is fit for purpose in Singapore schools. So what this book then offers us, which is really great, is a more pluralistic and inclusive theory of justice. It contributes to that work so that we can understand more broadly how things happen elsewhere. This book has garnered the attention not only of practitioners who are working in the school areas, but also the Education Minister in Singapore. And we're really excited to launch this book and support the work of these amazing practitioners in Singapore next month, actually. But I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm going to hand over to Justin and Tyler now, and really looking forward to listening to you both speak. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Hi, good day, everyone. My name is Justin Mui from the Restorative Community Care Services, or LCCS for short. And Carrie is showing a copy of the book that we just published. In fact, I couldn't remember when it was that Carrie first reached out to us. So I checked my email, and it was in February of 2022 when she first asked if we would want to work on this book project. So we thought like, okay, sure, what's there to lose? Let's just try and write and document our work. It actually took us almost 2 years. So I couldn't believe it. I thought it was 1 year, but it was 2 years. In January 2024, that was when we finally completed our manuscripts and got it sent over to Routledge, to the publishers. And so this year is also the 10th anniversary of the Builders Project, which is a whole school restorative practice culture change project, working with all stakeholders in school. And we are very happy to share just some snapshots of our journey over the past decade, as well as the work that we put together to gather information from various stakeholders to put the book together. So Tyler and myself, we are just 2 of 5 authors. And I'm the Executive Director of LCCS. And at LCCS, our work is to advocate for a restorative movement to break the cycle of hurt and build connected communities of empowered individuals. It's quite a mouthful, but basically in Singapore, we have been advocating for the mainstream adoption of restorative practices across various segments, ranging from schoolwork to community work to people in maximum security prison. And this year, we will be running our conference in Singapore. All of you are welcome if you want to come over and fly over to Singapore, where we are running a conference titled Singapore, a Restorative Nation. And we have our Minister of Law and Second Minister for Home Affairs, who would be there as our guest of honor. So Tyler would actually be doing most of the speaking tonight. Not because I'm using like my executive director card and getting him to do all the work, but because he was involved very much on the ground. And I think that he has most of the rich stories to share. My role was actually more pitching for the project to funders, which was about 11 years ago. So over to Tyler to share and introduce himself.
Yeah. So my name is Tyler, and I remember I think whatever that I prepared for this talk just went out the window, because when I was hearing Carrie and Justin introduce the work, I remembered this. When I first started the project, I was 21 years old. Now I am 32 years old. And so I've seen the project grow. Back then, I was a youth worker. I didn't have my degree. Now I have my master's in counseling. So it has evolved so much over time. And I can't emphasize the love that I have for this project. And I think when you asked Justin about how much I care about the project, it was meaningful enough for me to leave the organization and come back again. And so that was how meaningful it is. And I think what I want to do here is to tell stories. And I am gonna leverage on what Justin say. And if you have anything to do with statistics, numbers, you ask him. You can ask me about the stories. Okay, so let me just flash open these slides. Give me a moment. Yeah. So restorative relationship, community, and the restorative school. Everyone is looking at the screen, yes? You're not seeing any of my presenter notes, yeah? Okay, wonderful. Those are my secrets, so no one should see them. Yep, so I'm going to introduce a little bit about Singapore and what is the context here. Just a little bit of geographical perspective. We are between Malaysia and Indonesia. We are a very small dot. How small are we? We are about half of London's size. I can literally run a marathon across from one end to the other. That's how small it is. A half marathon from the south to the north, to put things into perspective. Population, we have 6 million people living in Singapore, and 4 major ethnic groups in Singapore: the Chinese, Malay, Indian, and Eurasians. These are the 4 major ones, with Chinese as the majority. Yeah. And so with every community, I always like to start with the values. What are the values of Singaporeans? And can I click the slide? Okay, everyone is seeing the slide change, yes? So these are the 5 values that are essential to that shape Singapore across our 60 years. This year we celebrated our 60th anniversary. We call it SG60. These are the 5 values: a nation before community and society before self. Family as the basic unit of society, community support and respect for the individual, consensus, not conflict, racial and religious harmony. These are the 5 core values that we aspire. And so whichever part of Singapore, these are what we want to shape the community towards. So when you look at policies, what is guiding them, these are the 5 that's guiding. And so as practitioners, what am I trying to emphasize here is this, that we believe that Singapore has the necessary attributes and values for RP to thrive. Yeah, and we are seeing that across the years that we practice. So Justin was talking about prison, and today we're talking about schools. We've seen how RP has been helpful, but as to everything, we try and inspire, we try to change. There are also challenges as well. So today's story, I'm going to walk you through the joys of the project, how we see RP flourish, and yet also at the same time, I think one of the chapter we wrote about the birth pains of restorative practice in Singapore. So in this project, so in case you don't know the title of the project, it's called the Builders Project. And let me introduce you to our mascot. Everyone, this is Barry. Not Bob, B for Barry the builder. We don't want any copyright infringement there to come to us. And right beside Barry, you will see the little hedgehog. We call that Straw. So strawberry together. That's what we like to joke. Straw is actually an echidna, and if you can see over here, this is what we use to represent how when someone experiences shame, they would close up and open up. And gradually, as we think about the Builders Project, we want to integrate this into the mascot as well. And so with my new haircut, I used to have hair, and so now I'm looking a lot like Barry and Straw now, if you can imagine. Yeah. So what does it mean to be a builder in the school context? This first session of the group work, we call it group work. I'll introduce to you a little bit more. I'm standing or sitting, depends. We're in a circle, 40 students in class. I would ask this, I'll tell them this, in fact, not ask them. I'll tell them this, we are here to build something, and the students are so excited. And then I'll tell them, we are here to build a ship. Do you want to guess what ship are we building? Some will say cruise ship, spaceship, rocket ship. And then the mic drops. I'll say, we are here to build relationships, and you would see, wow, Tyler, that's such a horrible, horrible joke that you are playing on us. But we do build things, figurines and things like that. And we want to introduce the idea of building relationships to the students. And so what are we trying to build here? Firstly, we're trying to build ownership. How can we gather willing participation from the stakeholders? Now, we know when we're trying to implement restorative practice, one of the key words in Singapore, I don't know whether it's the same for elsewhere, is the word buy-in. How can we get the buy-in from stakeholders to introduce this idea? So willing participation is this. I want to go through with the stakeholders through a fair process, right? I want to engage them. I want to find out more what their needs are. I want to have conversation and eventually explain what the project is about, and then move on to expectations. What do we need you to do here, and how can you take ownership of the project 3 years down the road? And so we want to build ownership in this project. Second thing, we want to build partnerships. In Singapore schools, there's a lot of vendors, program vendors, we call them. They will come in to do enrichment programs, and we wanted to do something different. And so with the Builders Project, we want, because it's whole school, rather than coming in at the end of the school day, I had to go through such a large shift. I remember before that, my working hours started from 9 a.m. all the way to 5:30. I remember shifting my clock at 6:30. I'm at the school. The first few days I'm wondering, what am I doing here? Usually I am in bed. And so there was such a major shift, but we wanted to be more than that. We aspire. And so we were very committed to that. And we eventually, when we are involved in things like flag raising ceremonies, I'm not sure whether you do that in your part of the world, but over here, every morning we have like a parade, a school parade, where the whole school gathers, we'll sing the national anthem, take the pledge together before everyone goes to class. Yeah, and so we would be part of that. We will be, engaging students during recess. We will be in staff meetings and things like that. And that is how we wanted to be beyond program vendors, because vendors don't do that, but we do that. And so when we come to this meeting, we want to wear the hat of a consultant as well. We're not just there to deliver, we are there to understand. We want to discover the strategies. What are some of the strategies that can make it work? And how can we be involved? We want to accommodate to your needs, right? How can we play around with what we have on the paper and make it adapt to the needs of the school? So we're thinking about that. Build understanding is about moving from harms to needs, right? Moving from harms to needs. So we want to pay attention to whose interest comes first. At the end of the sharing, I will show you a whole list of measurements of what the Builders Project measures are. And we were so determined to meet that. But do those needs come first, or do the school needs come first? The answer is all of us. How can we then come together to gather that ownership? My measures are also your measures. Can we succeed together? Can we build understanding that these are all our needs, and we want to accommodate, and we want to meet those needs, not accommodate, to meet those needs. And eventually, wow, you see this restorative practice building. We're building culture here, because the little things that we do, the little involvement will all become part of the culture. And I'm going to share with you stories later about how these culture develop amongst the school leaders, the teachers, and also with the students. Over here, I have Brendan Morrison's hierarchy of restorative responses. With every strategy, we need a structure. I remember last time when I first met Justin, he used to make us sit down through this thing called the logic model process. Structures are very important in Singapore. It's important in convincing stakeholders. And so the project is also based upon this structure. And so welcome Barry back to it, the slide. And this is our structure, which is similar to Brandon Morrison's structure, which is the building phase. The whole school is involved. I'm moving my hands, but I realize I've got a laser pointer. Yeah. So the building phase involves everyone. Yeah, you have the whole school training, introducing the language of restorative practice to the parents, the teachers, the students. This is also where we introduce the first 8 sessions. And then after that, the reconnecting phase of the students that are involved, we pick those with higher needs and have them to be part of the reconnecting phase, because we want them to reconnect. These are students with higher needs, which also means that I don't want to overgeneralize, but these needs, when not met in class, would be coming out as misbehaviors at times. Yeah. And I think we can empathize with that. And so with that, we want to take these students out and have them to be part of the reconnecting phase, where they can come together to have the casework and group work together, and they have the classroom circles. And then following that, the highest tier, the repairing phase, the serious incidents, which I am going to share at the end as well. One of this conference that we did for shoplifting instance. We want to do these conferences because 80% of the time we want to spend building relationships, and then the 20% of the time we want to respond to incidences. Yeah, when we honor that ratio of 80-20 or 70-30. Yeah. So some might be asking me about restorative school culture, whether is it sustainable, and it's not a passing program. So it starts small, right? I use the acronym of SEED over here. It starts small. If you read through the book, a lot of plants everywhere. We love plants. And so the seed is like planting in and to create the culture within the school. And so it starts small. It starts with a little conversation. E, experience brings meaning. E, again, engaging in change with others, and then discovering invisible leadership. What am I talking about here? I'm going to tell a story. So when I first started as a support builder, and that was my role initially, I realized I had teachers were like, oh, who's this Tyler? Who's this James that is coming into the office? I'm like looking at a stranger. They're not part of the school. Are they vendors? Who are they? It's so intrusive, maybe at times. And so perhaps, they might be thinking that, yeah, I don't know for sure. They wouldn't tell me that. And so we needed to start the little conversations. And so we started to talk a little bit with the teachers that are leading the programs. We wanted to find out more about what where we can meet those needs, and those little conversations started. It was only at the end, as we continue to build the relationships across the years, that we got to know more people, right? This includes the clerk, which is going to be very essential because the clerk actually disburses amounts of money, pocket money, to students. And sometimes the engagement with that is not particularly restorative. And then we can have those little conversations and to help them understand a little bit more. Remember, build understanding. And so the conversations also start to change. And that is also what we mean by experience brings meanings. Before the teachers were introduced to circles, they were like, this is such a, I need to move a lot of things. Is this gonna make worth the while? But over time, I've had teachers that arrange the classroom in the way so that they can move into the circles as quickly as possible in the most efficient way. And with the meaning surrounding circle, we want to start small, bring meaning, and we have those conversations with these teachers a lot. You know, how can we engage with a particular students and things like that. And over time, these teachers also start to champion the cause of restorative practice. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? Have you used the restorative conversations, questions with your students? Maybe give that a try. Can we do a circle for this? You get to hear these conversations starting to appear a lot more in the office. And so it starts with a seed, yeah? So who are the ones that we can immediately start a conversation with? And it doesn't have to be school leaders. It can be someone that hierarchically you're not looking at the top, yeah? Anyone that, you know, how do I put it? The teaching or the non-teaching staff, they can also contribute to the culture. So with the culture, schools are made of so many classrooms, and so we want to zoom into classrooms. Many times it's a lot about academics, about individual performance, and how am I doing? That self-evaluation is very high because performance is also connected with self-evaluation. I need to perform a certain way. But what about the other things? So our Minister for Education then, Mr. Chan Chun Sing, actually said this about classrooms. Classrooms is a safe place where values are cultivated, lifelong relationships built, and a shared identity forged. It is a warm and supportive environment that allows students with different learning needs and aspirations to discover their passions and develop their strengths. And above all, it is a trusted space. Yeah, it is a trusted space. And this quote kind of anchors it all for us. And when we think about our classrooms, can we think about it as a trusted space? Or is it a space of performance? What is the meaning behind it? And remember the seed? Yeah, experience with meanings, right? And so what is the meaning for each and every one of the students that is in the class? Can they appreciate the classroom as a supportive environment, a trusted space where relationships are built? So we want to center relationships, and I'm going to introduce you to another acronym, CIRCLE. Today's sharing has quite a number of acronyms, not in the book. So at least we have it recorded. CIRCLE as the center, because when we go to classrooms, we have our builders classes, we are always seated at this in the form of a circle. And our circle time consists of all 40 students sharing about their own experience surrounding the themes. And so how do we move from me to we in classrooms? Firstly, the classroom is centered on relationships. Is the focus of the classroom surrounding the relationships? Did we think a little bit too much about discipline that we forgot about the human connection? Are we emphasizing a lot on structure, a lot on discipline, rather than relationships? Can we bring forth that balance again? Inclusion through embracing diversity. Everyone has diverse perspectives. I remember sitting through so many circles where students say many different things. And sometimes as a facilitator, we are wondering to ourselves, well, what is being shared, create any tension in class? Are the students able to step in themselves to, take up the responsibility to speak up? Yeah, we want to encourage students to resolve their own issues and speak up, right? When they are uncomfortable. And so in circle practice, we have this thing called circle keepers. And this was something that we introduced when after a while, after 4 sessions, we have shown the students how how to maintain not order, but how can we emphasize the circle guidelines in class. And so we would have these circle keepers that step up, and we always use these 3: listen from the heart, speak from the heart, respect the talking piece. And we would get the whole class to say it whenever, we get distracted or anything. Someone will raise the hand, whether it's the facilitator or the student, raise the hand and says, and then all of us will say, listen from the heart, speak from the heart, respect the talking piece, and we will all keep quiet. I'm very tempted to try this, but no, let's not go there to unmute the mics and say this together. But we do that in class. Sometimes we have the bell. So circle keeper will come to the center of the circle, press the bell, go back to the seat, and everyone will say 1, 2, 3. Listen from the heart, speak from the heart, respect the talking piece, to remind all of us in class that, hey, we need to remember the guidelines that brings us here. Care is also important beyond harm to needs. Listening, safety to speak the unspoken, empowerment through reflection and self-regulation. I am going to use one example to share with you. I'll share with you a story that shows the care, listening, empowerment through relationship and self-regulation. So I've had this particular student that got into a little squabble with her classmates. It ended up with a little bit of hair pulling. Tensions were high, and it was a small group of a few students. And so this person that caused harm actually realized that, oh, I've hurt others. And so in session 7, one of the things that we do is we give the restorative questions to every student in the form of a card, and they will put it in their wallet. I don't know whether they still bring wallets to school nowadays, but back then there was wallet. Now they tap the watches, so they may not have that anymore in Singapore. So they will have it in the wallet whenever. So this particular student and realized that, oh, I have hurt others. And so she gathered these few students whom she has hurt and took out the card. And so she answered the question on site number 1, which is for the one that caused harm. And she would ask the other students how those who have been harmed, those questions at the back. So restorative question 1 and 2, I don't have it over here in slide, but she facilitated a circle with herself as a facilitator and also the person who has caused harm, and spoke through the whole conversation of about, I think 15 to 20 minutes, if I remember correctly. And she was so happy that she managed to resolve the conflict herself, that, she used the talking piece, and the reflection, the self-regulation was there. And that is what we're talking about. It's not about her needing someone to come in, but she can take ownership and make the classroom a wee space. Yeah. So generally, I would pause for questions, but if we do have anything, please feel free to put them inside the chat, and we will answer at the end during the Q&A.
Just to let you know, Tyler, we have about 5 minutes left.
Oh, we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
Oh dear, I think I have about an hour left in my content. So I am going to move through some perspective really quickly. Sorry about that, lost track of time. So over here, we have a school leader's perspective that talks about misbehavior. Remember, just now we talked about discipline, right? This school leader was talking about when they talk about when teachers talk to students about misbehaviors, they go straight to the issue. I remember myself doing that as well. But we also the school leader also thought that the circle time gave the teachers a chance to express how they feel about the child's behavior. A slightly more human side to the teacher was also shown. It gives them a chance to express how their feelings, all of them, right? And it is quite powerful for the students because they can see that their actions don't happen in isolation. Consequential thinking is here. Human expression is also here. So you can see how discipline is being mapped out through the FAIR process and in the form of circles. I'm gonna move through this as well. So different roles we have in the restorative culture. We have the school leaders, the teachers, and parents. 3 different important stakeholders. We are not having the children and the funders over here. We wanted to emphasize the school leaders, teachers, and parents, because we often talk a lot about students, but some of these stakeholders, we struggle. Yeah, I think as a builder, some of these stakeholders, I tend to struggle a lot. I think parents, most of the time, for me as a practitioner. And so there are some key emphasis when the restorative culture shift, the school leaders are also starting to see things differently. And over here, when you look at this quote, this school leader actually says that relationship is important to us. The culture is also about relationship, right? And when you look at this teacher, the teacher also says that this restorative practice has made me more aware of myself, how I am going to approach my kids in the situation. There's a greater sense of self-reflection, not only in the students, but also in teachers. And we are noticing that. And the beautiful thing about this is the reflection is a gift, right? The teachers is able to do that. They demonstrate that. The students also learn that along the way. Now, what about parents? Parents, I don't think we have time for Andy's story, but in this sharing, and you can read it in, I think, chapter 6 in the book, this open dialogue facilitated sharing, diverse perspective, empathic engagement, building deeper and more authentic relationships within the family unit. We have these family circles at the end of the reconnecting phase, where where the family come together to talk about certain issues that was being referred, and we involve parents in that conversation. We also have the parents training, or the parents workshop. I think workshop is a lot more appropriate. We introduce them to the idea of calm, cool, connected as a form of restorative parenting, and the mind to be firm and fair, the social discipline window, and the fair process. We use the word the mouth, which stands for the 3 E's: engagement, explanation, and expectation, clarity. So parents are introduced to the restorative culture through this infographic. Now, the last part, the outcome indicators over here, 5 different client indicators. We're looking about numbers here. All these numbers reflect what happens in a year. So we are measuring in the building phase, 75% of students improve in pro-social skills and increase in school engagement. We use the response from the classroom circles, the teachers' evaluation, and pre-post surveys. The parents' participation in adopting restorative parenting style to hit 70% in the form of evaluation forms and success stories. The teachers, the measurement is through workshop evaluation form and also success stories. And so we emphasize a lot, not only on the quantitative measures, but also the qualitative measures as well. For the reconnecting phase, client outcome indicator 4, we want to see a lot more pro-social skills and increase in resilience to deal with difficulties in the form of pre-post SDQ, strengths and difficulties questionnaire, and also feedback form, attendance log as well. And for the conferencing, we have the students maintain and refrain from reoffending for a period of 1 year. For those that are grade 6, they move on to grade, I'm not sure whether there's grade 7 there, but over here we call it secondary 1. It's a different school in all, so we are unable to track beyond that. And so for us, for primary 6 students, we track until graduation. Other than that, we have the teachers post-conference survey feedback form, because they are part of the stakeholders as well in the conference process. I have a video.
Tyler, I think we can perhaps not show this.
Yep.
But what I would do instead is I would share the article and also a YouTube link. So perhaps everyone can watch it in your own time. Yeah, we can get straight to the questions.
Wonderful.
Thank you for that, Tyler. I always enjoy speaking to you because you're so passionate and excited about what it is that you're doing. It makes the time pass really easily for us that are watching you as well. So thank you for that. I would like to open the floor to people to be able to ask questions for any clarification around what Tyler asked, or any questions that he didn't cover. Well, content that he didn't cover that you're wondering about in terms of the project, in terms of outcomes, delivery, challenges they experienced. They do cover all of this and then some in their book, which is excellent. I will say so. So yes, over to you. Please feel free to to ask any questions that you have.
I had a question, if that's not too cheeky for me to butt in as one of the organisers here. I'm really interested in the work that you do involving parents. Like culturally in Singapore, are parents generally very involved in schools? Is that something that they're often very enthusiastic to do, or is it difficult to get parents involved? Like just speaking from experience here, obviously it's very different in different schools across the UK, but I know that like the school that my children go to in particular often struggles to get parental engagement for a variety of reasons. A lot of it are demographic reasons, parents who are working several jobs or parents from other countries who might not feel very confident with English and things, for instance, so might struggle to engage with the school. But yeah, I'm just interested if like what's the culture like in Singapore? Is that something that's easy to engage parents, or is it difficult to get them on board with some of that or involved in those parental workshops and things like that? I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so part of the struggle that we realized early on in the program is that when we designed workshops, the parents that were attending the workshops were most often the parents that were highly engaged with school and also with their children. I think it was, I think we discovered this about 3 to 4 years on. And what we did instead was we started to have bite-sized learning. So we printed some concepts on like paper, and we brought it to their homes where, you know, when we have a chat with the parents, we take out the practice domains, or sometimes it's called the social discipline window, where you talk about working with and not doing things to or for your children. And we whip that out in a session, and we share with the parents at that time about how they can apply that to their child. And maybe another session, when we visit the parents, then we take out the restorative practice question cards. And we say, okay, so here are some questions that we're using to engage your child. And we kind of create a scenario where, you know, what happens when your teacher calls you and tells you your child was involved in a fight? What's the first question that you would ask your child when he or she walks through the door? And usually they would say, I would ask, like, why do you do it? And we say, okay, hang on, you know, here are some questions. You can consider asking your child what happened, who have you affected, what needs to happen to make things right. Some of these restorative questions. So that's what we refer to as bite-size sharing. Also, just I shared the link to the video, just a little bit about that, and the article also makes reference to the same situation of a boy named Manfred, which is not his real name. Manfred was caught for shoplifting, and actually his mom was someone that was labeled by the teachers as a difficult parent. In fact, the teachers would call her using like different mobile phone numbers, because once she recognizes it's from the school, she wouldn't answer. So they had a very conflictual relationship with her. But after the restorative practice conference, she shared her struggle as a single mom, and the teachers started to see her in a different light, and they had a very different relationship with her henceforth. So in the video, that's actually her son that's sharing about his experience in the restorative practice conference. And what's unique is he was sharing about the conference which he experienced 5 years back when he was in primary school. So we managed to keep in contact with him all the way until he was 16. And we asked him, like, do you still remember the conference? Do you still remember the shoplifting incident? Would you be willing to come forward and share your story? So that was quite beautiful, and hope you can watch that.
Great, thank you for that. So, well, Wendy's just asked the question. Actually, Beata's just asked before. The Mint has to record, so the recording will be provided to everybody who is registered for this this meeting. So don't worry, we'll have access to that afterwards. Right. So Wendy Pendleton is asking how you start a relationship with the school. How do you partner with them? So from their perspective, from her perspective in the US, she's just finished her master's in education. Focused on restorative justice in education, I think. Wendy, I hope that's right. And she's saying that she's had experience of working in alternative education classes in middle and high school. She's not currently working in the school system, but would really love to do this. And evidently that flows from her education specialism as well. So do you have any kind of advice for Wendy?
Yeah, so we generally use two approaches. I'll just quickly share them as like the bottom up or the top down approach. And we use both, and they're both effective in their own ways. So the bottom up approach, when schools want to run programs in Singapore, generally speaking, they put up a request in an open government platform called GBs, or government business. So it's transparent and anyone can bid for the projects. We have colleagues who are like essentially scouting that platform. They're putting in keywords like relationships, restorative. But in the earlier days, about 10 years ago, you probably wouldn't have schools searching for the word restorative. And if they are, they're very enlightened. So we look out for keywords like student well-being. We looked up for keywords like character education, and we proposed a restorative practice approach and methodology. So in other words, it's a bottom-up approach. The top-down approach, what we did was, so in the Singapore system, you can contact the cluster superintendents. These are public schools we're talking about, and majority of our schools in Singapore are in the public school system. So the cluster superintendents are the reporting officers of the school principals, and we write to them and we introduce our work. And actually, so the top-down approach works when you have a funded program. And so the Builders Project was funded by the National Council of Social Services. Actually, that's another story of its own, which we documented in one of our chapters, where it's a kind of an interesting situation. We managed to convince the grant makers to give us the funds for this project. And then we had to find schools who were willing to take it up. And it's a bit strange because usually if you want to design a program for a school, I think the true restorative way would be to go to the school and to understand their needs in the context, then you propose something that is customized and would meet their needs. However, because we had to secure the funds first, so we wrote out like a full-fledged logic model, theory of change. It was all cast in stone, and we went to the school and said, hey, here's a funded project, but by the way, these are all the outputs that you've got to commit to. And it was a bit of a struggle to get schools to buy in. And you can read more about it in one of our chapters. But that was a top-down approach because we went to the cluster superintendents and we said, hey, do you know of any primary schools in your region that might be interested in this? And it was quite funny because I think the cluster superintendent, in Singapore, how it works is if it's free, it's funded, people generally would be a bit more interested in it. And it comes from the cluster superintendent, so they assume that it's endorsed. So the principals were treating us very nicely when we went into their school, and they were really attentive to what we had to propose. So that's the top-down and the bottom-up way.
Anybody else? I think, well, Justin, Tyler, do you want to reflect on what your experience was with some of the teachers who were not that excited about restorative practice initially and ultimately became really big supporters of it? I think that we see this quite a lot, not only in restorative justice, but in a range of things. Are there any reflections there about, what it was that got them on board? Any kind of insights that you would draw from your experience and be able to share with others working in the space?
Okay, so I'm going to work hard because I feel like Tyler has worked a lot, but Tyler, it doesn't mean I'm taking your voice away. Yeah. So one of the things that we do for teacher engagement, and usually in our initial conversation with principals, is we ask them to think of a teacher who seems to be very effective in doing two things. One, they have a wonderful relationship with their students. Two, when they have to respond to an issue, when they have to even make an unpopular decision and mete out some consequences, somehow the students seem to be more willing to receive the consequence and the relationships remain intact. And we ask them, I'm sure there's such a teacher around. And usually they would think long and hard and they would say, yes, there is such a teacher. And we say, hey, describe this person to us. And chances are, actually not so much chances, but this is kind of like a cheap trick that always works so far in the past 10 years. The teacher that they end up describing is someone who innately is restorative in nature. And so we say, hey, actually, we're not coming here to introduce something new to you. What we are doing is making something implicit more explicit, a practice that a teacher does, and we are basically codifying the practice and sharing that with the wider teaching faculty so that you can have more teachers like this teacher that you mentioned. And often the school principals will say, yes, like I want to do that. So that's usually one way to get an early win. I think I just quickly respond to the question on third culture kids. So because we work in public school settings, I think many of them tend to be locals. But what was interesting was that last year we went to an international school in China that got us to go over to do restorative practice training. And I think what they have realized from last year's training, and they're getting us to go back again this year, is that the circle processes are very useful for helping to build connections. In fact, the questions that you ask can be questions that the students themselves come up with. So you can invite third culture kid students to basically own the session by suggesting some of the questions that the class could use. And this is like, it's a shared sense of agency that's given to all children so that they're not singled out that way. Yeah.
So sometimes language is also a struggle. I don't know whether the third culture kids do struggle with language in your understanding or rather everyone's understanding. But when I think of third culture kids, some of the students in public school come from with parents from a different nationality like Thai or Vietnam. And English is not their first language, and we find ourselves as facilitators reminding everyone to give them time to form the words. And the kindness from giving them time then translates into trust and relationship, because I never knew that I can have a voice, it's something new, it's surprise startle. And then the relationships change from there. And you see them so the group work also has some games, activities that they do. One of the things we do, building marshmallow towers together, where they'll put the sticks, the marshmallow, and they try and communicate with the vocabulary that they have. They play together. And I think when it comes to children, play is a language, and then the language comes and represent the experience. At least that's what we notice. And so getting them to communicate through play, the circle time also comes and reinforces a relationship. And I think that's what I'm also thinking.
I wonder if, just as a final question before we close, you speak about bullying in the book, a case of that. And I wonder what kind of lessons that you've taken away from that in terms of helping people to understand how best to approach that situation when it happens. And my children's primary school, for example, just pretend it doesn't happen and hope it goes away, and I think that that's a natural tendency, is to try to not bring too much attention to it, and it'll just work itself out. But from your experience around bullying, which happens in most schools at some point, what would your advice be and reflections from the Builders Project?
I recall in the earlier years, I think it was a primary 6 student, meaning she was graduating. I think she only had like 1 or 2 months left to school. And she happened to be from a different nationality and ethnic minority. And I think she definitely would identify with the idea of a third culture kid. The other children called her names like virus, Ebola, and stuff like that. And in fact, most schools, like what Carrie mentioned, would just probably decide that, well, school's going to end. We could let these children will move on to different schools. Let's not handle it. But she had a form teacher who felt responsible and didn't want her to have this as her last memory of primary school. So the form teacher gathered this girl and her classmates in a restorative peacemaking session. And it was facilitated by my colleague, and we provided an opportunity for her to share how she was feeling. We also invited her friends, like people who hung out with her, to also share their perspectives of how hurt she has been. And in fact, we realized then that the children actually they lacked empathy because they didn't have an opportunity to hear their stories. And when they started to realize how much they have affected her, I think the other thing that was really critical was to hear the voice of the teacher. Sometimes teachers think that they have to be very distant from the situation, but instead, the teacher shared how he felt in this incident and why he thought it was really important for the children to have this circle, even though school was going to come to an end. So that was also a critical factor for the students. Yeah.
I think that's great. I mean, it just really does go to show that, teaching is a calling, isn't it? And I think that sometimes we can get caught up in the kind of machinations, being a cog in the wheel, and it's really important to be able to remind ourselves of why we got into that profession, and to make sure that we can create the conditions wherein we can live up to what it is that we want it to be, right? Which is to nurture and to support and to encourage and to allow people to flourish in our care. So thank you so much for your project and your presentation today. I'm biased. I think it's wonderful. I've read the whole book, so I get it. Again, if you are interested in reading it, Routledge is selling it for around £30, which is very unusual for Routledge because most of the academic books are about 100. But this is the kind of new model that we're trying to initiate with them. So please do feel free to read that. And please also don't forget to fill out the evaluation form on the session. It really does help us to make sure that people that are attending get what they are looking for, that we can help to shape our presenters' presentations, particularly in the series for you. I just want to end by thanking Tyler and Justin for their hard work, their passion, and their care, and also to Joy and Rosie for supporting the series, but also for the important work that they do. And lastly, for all of you giving up your time on this Tuesday afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you may be. It's been lovely to see your faces, and hopefully we catch up in another setting sometime soon. I hope you have a good day, everyone. Take care.